will the local market react to the president's threat? We'll get a preview on today's trade from Warren de Guzman at the Philippine Stock Exchange in Makati. So Warren, first time to close above 8,400 yesterday, just as foreign investors are coming back to the market. We hear strong words from Mr. Duterte. Do we expect a pullback today?
Well, we're just going to have to wait and see whether or not that will impact trade today, Rain. But yesterday there were actually net buyers helping to push the PSEI up to that historic level of 8,400. Also, volume was pretty much decent, hitting the average for the year of around 8.1 billion pesos per day. So we saw some activity, we saw some volume supporting us at 8,400. And Mr. Philip Hagedorn of ATR Asset Management actually mentioned that a delay in tax reform, the much-awaited catalyst for the market, he says, would be a good thing because it would bring the market down to maybe 8,150, and that could be a buying opportunity for investors. We're joined now by Ms. Cristina Ulang, Head of Research at First Metro Investment, to talk about those things that you just mentioned, Rain. Good morning, Cristina.
Good morning, Aaron.
All right, so you just heard the report regarding President Duterte's scathing remarks about the European Union. Just yesterday we had members of the European Chamber saying that there are 40 European companies looking to invest. What happens now?
I think this is a temporary political noise, and it's very filled up with emotion, and I think this will blow over, and diplomacy will win the day.
Regarding the 8,400, do you think that will see some impact from what happened yesterday with the president?
Okay, I think there's going to be some sentiment, some negative sentiment out of that, but I think the fundamentals and the optimism will prevail given the reform drive of the government. I think it's what the foreign investors are looking for, how the reform drive is moving along. And it's moving well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the main reason why our guests have been saying that we're at 8,400 because people are excited about tax reform, people are excited about procurement reform, about the possible changes in the negative list for foreign investment. However, we are actually expecting already a delay in tax reform. The Senate's going on recess. They're going to have only a short window between this break and the holiday break to actually pass tax reform. Is that going to be a good thing or a bad thing for shares?
I think as far as the tax reform law, I think it's done, it's happening. It's just a question of time. True, there's a delay, but I think it's going to be implemented early in the year. We could have a law by year end, and I think that's what the market is digesting right now.
And people are actually nitpicking about the revenue side of the tax reform package. Some are worried that it won't be enough to support the Build initiative of President Duterte. The Senate version is very far away from the House version in terms of how much revenue will be generated. Some of the guests have been saying anything below 100 billion in generated revenues would actually be negative for the market. Do you agree with that?
I think the accomplishments of the Senate, the House and the Senate, and bringing the CTRP at the bicameral level, I think it's a big accomplishment. It shows that the country can get its act together, and our reform drive is on track. I think that's what's important. Whether it's below the 100 level, 100 billion peso level that is very much expected of it, I think what is investors focusing now is really the accomplishment. The fact that it's moving and it's going to be there in place to fund the infrastructure program.
Well, Cristina, going back to the market, very, very optimistic apparently, and a lot of the guys have been saying 8.5 is very close. 9,000 is quite a probability by next year if we actually see infrastructure projects break ground this quarter and next year. What are your forecasts for the PSEI?
We have a house view, and in the First Metro Investment Capital Markets Conference last July, we announced an 8,200 target by year, and but of course we see the index happily above that level, and personally I have my own target, which is about 8,005. I'm optimistic enough to say that the PSEI could hit 8,005 by year end, or any time now in the fourth quarter.
Any time now, yeah, we're so close. The other day we were actually 8,425, so it really is a realistic target to hit within the next month actually. Third quarter earnings are coming in. Do you think that's going to give us extra push toward 8,500?
I think it's going to surprise positively. We look at the indicators now. We see exports is in double digit, like 13%, and we note that car sales also strong at 16%. And I think the game changer is really government spending, which we've seen grow double digit in the last 3 months. And government is doing a lot of catching up in terms of spending. I think that's what's going to propel the economy forward. We're very optimistic that the GDP is going to be slightly above 6.5, and that's going to push earnings on the high side. And I think it's the set of earnings results are going to meet the expectation in the third quarter.
Above 6.5, that's on the low end of government's forecast range.
Yeah.
That'll be okay with you.
I think it's anything slightly above that, considering that we have some setbacks in the agriculture, also the Julina typhoon, and of course the peso weakness, which may be good for the exports, is also hitting some of the cost of sales, the cost structure of some companies that we see listed. So given the setbacks and given the positive push, net, we see it GDP above 6.5.
All right, Warren, Christina, if I may interject here a little bit. In a text message to ANC this morning, European Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines President Gunter Taws said the investment summit with European businessmen will push through next, adding that it's business as usual even after President Duterte's fiery speech. And it seems Christina agrees, correct?
Yeah, I think it's more of an emotional remark, and it is very attendant to an independent foreign policy. And I think this is going to blow over and optimism will prevail. It's going to be really business as usual, considering the attraction of the Philippine fundamentals. I think that is what counts. And whether our reform drive is moving, and it's moving, and I think that's the incentive for investors to be here in the Philippines, do business with the government of Duterte.
All right, how do we play this market though? We've seen record highs in Ayala Corporation, SM Investments, BDO, all of the usual names that are already actually pretty pricey if you look at the PE ratios. Are those still the names that you're advising clients to buy right now?
In terms of the portfolio strategy, we're adopting a highly selective approach, and we try to see what companies would have very good growth stories next year and reasonably valued still. Like for instance, Metro Pacific and Aboitiz Power, they have expansion stories next year in terms of their capacities, like toll roads and power for Aboitiz, and for Metro Pacific, of course, your hospitals and your highways and your road connections. Also power.
And of course, everybody's also expecting a big boost to the consumer sector from tax reform with the lower income tax rates. You guys are also cooking up something that will allow investors to really find the best names to cash in on that.
Yeah, I'd like to take this opportunity to mention our index, which we are launching in the fourth quarter of this year. It's actually an index of consumer stocks. We have 18 constituent stocks in the index, and this is really a set of stocks that you can bet on by buying into the index, and it's very consumer oriented. Its theme is really the growth in the spending power of the Filipino household. So we try to capture in the index all those stocks that are heavily oriented towards the consumer. For instance, we have stocks that include the brand names, the leading brand names like Jollibee, for instance, and all of the other conglomerates that have exposure to the household expenditure patterns of the Filipino nation. Like for instance, communication, transportation, aviation, they all count as part of the household expenditures, and we try to represent them in the as a constituent equity of the index.
All right, very interesting to see how that pans out. Meanwhile, Rain, at the Forex market, the peso opened weaker against the US dollar, 51.53 from the previous close of 51.43. It's averaging 51.538 right now. Volume $32 million so far. Rain?
Lots of optimism and positivism for the end of the week and the end of the year. Thank you so much for your insight, Christina, and we'll get back to you, Warren. Thank you.